Hi, my name is Phil. I like to talk about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss how just 2 weeks after surrendering our EU membership, Boris Johnson's immediate plans for trade deals are collapsing into a humiliating heap as several of his key target nations are telling us to sod off one by one. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, then please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So I'd already talked about the way that the USA has gone from saying that the UK would be at the front of the queue for trade deals as soon as we became a third nation to actually now you're at the back of the queue as soon as we did actually become a third nation. But during the weeks leading up to the end of our EU membership, Boris Johnson and his ministers had been identifying other countries with whom they thought they could get a quick trade deal because speed is of the essence. It is of vital importance to Boris Johnson and his cronies. They insisted that if we gave them the power to bypass Parliament in the general election, that they would bring immediate Brexit dividends. He cannot say fairer than that. He's got a massive majority. He could not have possibly asked for more. He was going to show all us Ramonas that our fears were baseless and that the UK would prosper outside of the EU, and it would be immediate. But they didn't deny that they were going to need trade deals for that, or at least not most of the time. Sometimes they said that we'd do just fine without them, but that tended to be when they were boxed into a corner. The closer Brexit got to reality, the less they wanted to say that it would be okay under WTO terms, because, well, we're going to find ourselves under WTO terms and people are going to see the reality of that. So along with the US and the EU, Johnson's cabinet also identified the likes of Australia, New Zealand and Japan as countries with whom he could do business fairly quickly. Dominic Raab, the Foreign Secretary, was dispatched to Australia recently in order to quickly pursue what he called free and open trade. Well, New Zealand and Australian MPs were due to visit the UK in a return trip, but have now cancelled it. And they have been happy to say why this is. It is the same reason that President Trump is rebuffing Johnson as well. It is his awarding of a partial 5G contract to the Chinese firm Huawei. Now, Australia and New Zealand are, along with the US, part of the Five Eyes intelligence group that also includes the UK and Canada. The US has security fears over Huawei's role in the UK's 5G network. Or so they say. I don't know how much of it is valid and how much of it is politics. It doesn't actually matter. Australia and New Zealand have decided that they share those concerns. Again, whether rightly or wrongly, utterly irrelevant. This is politics. And if Johnson wants to win the game of politics, he's going to have to learn the rules really, really quickly. Because making this decision, and there's many people, sort of his supporters, that are very much against that decision. Their argument to him was very much that, okay, you may be endearing yourselves towards China by awarding this contract. Maybe, maybe not. But you are definitely pissing off a lot of our traditional allies and largest markets. We don't trade as much to China as we do these other markets. Now, if three of the members of the Five Eyes are telling the UK to piss off with trade negotiations for the same reason, it's very probable that Canada would do the same as well, which is the remaining member that's not the UK. The fact that they haven't has probably more to do with the fact that the UK is not targeting Canada as a prospect for a quick trade deal. They know it won't be, not least because Canada was very, very clear just last year that they are not going to deal with the UK until the UK has finalised a deal with the EU. And that's not going to happen very quickly, or indeed at all, if Boris Johnson gets his way. So the bottom line is that Boris Johnson is not even able to get trade talks off the ground with anyone at the moment, except, ironically, the EU. And I say ironically because this is the one group that he doesn't want a trade deal with. And all the time, all these people who voted Brexit and voted for Boris Johnson because he said he was going to deliver Brexit and get all these trade deals, they're looking at their watch. They're remembering people saying that we can sort out these trade deals quickly. Whenever anyone, the rest of us tried to say, no, this takes years, Boris Johnson insisted it didn't. Those Brexit supporters going, he says it doesn't, he says he can do it quickly. They're looking at their watch. Time's ticking away. It's a couple of weeks and we haven't even started talks with anyone. Not even started. And I know what some Brexiteers might think about this particular situation. They could argue, at first glance not unreasonably, that this isn't an indictment of Brexit, but of Boris Johnson's mishandling of it. After all, they may argue, if he didn't give the go-ahead for that Huawei contract, He wouldn't have pissed off those countries. We'd be talking with them, with Australia, New Zealand, the United States, and you know, we'd get our unicorn approved deal by the end of the year and it would all be glorious. But that is to fail to think deeply enough about it. Because remember what Brexiteers kept telling us about trade deals outside the EU. Our argument was that we couldn't possibly get better trade deals for two reasons. First of all, we have free trade deals with most of our trading markets, and you can't get better than free trade by definition. That's the best deal you can get. And secondly, even with markets where we don't trade completely freely, which is a fair number, the EU represents a much bigger market, a much bigger customer than we do alone. So how does a small customer, us, get better terms than a larger customer? It makes no sense. But the Brexiteers insisted that we would do so by playing hardball. We're too big an economy, too big a market for countries to ignore. They don't want to trade with us on WTO terms. Even larger markets than us, like the US, which can more easily lose us, even they don't want to lose us. We're still an important customer even to them, even though they're bigger. They won't want to lose out on a trade deal with the UK. Because although the US doesn't have a trade deal with the EU, it does have a series of trade agreements, bilateral agreements. And by us leaving, we wouldn't have those either. America would lose money. It is compelled to get a trade deal with us. But that has been exposed as a lie now. That is now a demonstrable lie. Because not only has the US told us to bugger off, actually you're not that important, so have Australia and New Zealand. And they're smaller economies than that of the UK. New Zealand really small compared to it. And what this has done is to completely expose the lie that the world needs to deal with the UK. It clearly doesn't, or it would not have rebuffed us like this. If those countries really didn't want to miss out, they'd have talked with us and combined those trade negotiations with continued efforts to persuade Johnson to change his mind on the 5G contract. Because he could have done that. They could have done that, negotiated with us and said, look, you know, you really need to stop this. They can't even be bothered to do that. They, you know, before he said he was going to come out in favour of it, they were sort of obviously having discussions. But when he's sort of publicly said this, they haven't gone, right, we need to try and change his mind. They've just gone, do you know what, we can't be bothered. They'd rather just forget about trade talks for now. And that speaks volumes about how little influence our rain-soaked, sheep-infested island really has. And on one level, it doesn't even have an awful lot to do with Huawei. You know, these same countries want trade deals with China. The US has just signed a trade deal with China. China controls that company. If it's that they wanted to keep Huawei at complete arm's length, why would they be wanting to trade with China? Because China is an important economy. The UK is not. You know, if it was really just about security as well, because China's not a member of Five Eyes, of course, if that was all it was about, then the US, Australia and New Zealand, and Canada when it comes to it, could just kick us out of their intelligence sharing groups, but still negotiate a trade deal, which doesn't have to encompass a security deal. You know, the US has signed a trade deal, as I say, with China just now. I'll bet you it doesn't include close cooperation on security and intelligence matters. That they're not doing that is because the trade deal isn't that important to them. They have more important things to do, like negotiate trade deals with the EU, which they are currently prioritising. And if smaller and larger economies alike are not desperate for a trade deal, as demonstrated, neither will anyone else be. Of course, yes, there are countries just like they would want a trade deal with us, you know, and they will be prepared to negotiate one with us, just as the EU are preparing to do. But they won't be in any hurry because it's not that important. The only country in a hurry to close a deal, any deal, is the UK. And that desperation just weakens our position even more so than it already had done. So I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, then also please click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.